Hi, I'm Al Gough,
And I'm Miles Millar.
and you are listening to Starkville's House of El.
Welcome to a very special episode of the House of El podcast. My name is Derek,
I'm Frank.
and if you have been listening to this show for the last 15 years, which is insane to say, 16 years, I guess, the term needs no introduction. I think it gets overused a little bit, but in this case, it's actually true. These two gentlemen need no introduction. Mr. Algoff, Mr. Miles Millar, thank you so much for joining us today as we approach the 20th anniversary of Smallville.
Thank you. We really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
How does that sound when you hear it? The 20th anniversary of Smallville.
Makes us sound old.
Yeah.
Well, you
That's
don't.
literally it.
You look perfect. You looked exactly the way you did in 2001. You look wonderful.
Thank you.
I do want to ask though, because it is kind of tomorrow, or very close for you. Is hours from now is date with the anniversary of September 11th, and this is kind of a weird, morbid question to start with, but I've always kind of been fascinated by it because the show did start just weeks after this huge event in the world, in the nation and the world, and affected us all in such a way. Is Smallville something, when you think of 9/11, is Smallville always synonymous with you? I know Hothead was filming, 103 was filming when that morning when things started happening, so kind of your memories of that day and how Smallville play into it.
We were writing at Miles's, and it was a very, I think like all of us, when it first started happening, it was like, what's going on? Nobody really knew. We were filming in Canada. They filmed all day, and then they closed the borders. So that was the first thing, and obviously grounded all the flights. And I think what's interesting is that the perception of the show changed because it launched, a month later. And before that, I think, the last iteration of Superman had been Lois and Clark, and it was like, oh, what are they doing? And, it's another, it was a little jokey and a little sort of dismissive. And then I think after that, I think, Superman has always kind of been America's hero. So I think it actually, changed the way people looked at the show. And it's like anything, you are just a, the times happen, and weirdly the show kind of reflects the times, though that's certainly not what we.
And it was very much in terms of, the aesthetic of the show was very much a celebration of Americana and the flag and the colors and Superman and all those things. But yeah, that day was incredible because we wrote all day up until like 10 p.m. and most shows in America that were shooting in America, I think almost all of them shut and closed. Everyone went home, and we had to keep shooting because we're in Canada. And what happened for the next, I think, month or two, John Schneider used to drive from LA to Vancouver. He wouldn't go in planes. So he'd be driving back and forth this, incredible distance. And it was, deeply traumatic for all the Americans in Canada, not being able to basically stop work for one thing, and then find out what was going on. And we were in such a hole in terms of scripts. We just had to keep writing that day. It was really an odd, strange, surreal experience. And yeah, and I even just last few days hearing about 9/11, it has brought me back to those early days of Smallville in a really, really profound way. It always gives me chills.
I used to work for John a few years ago with his production company, and he would talk about, I think they were filming on the football field that day when Clark was, and just how like that was just sort of this all-American, obviously in Vancouver, but this all-American moment in the midst of American tragedy, and just how, breathtaking that was to experience. So
yeah, and we asked them to shut it down. We said we need to close and stop, and they said no, you can't. It was one of those really weird, like, well, everybody else has stopped. Are we really going to keep going? And they said, yes, you have to. So it was just a really odd, and we had to anyway. But it was just a very odd experience.
Yeah.
I don't want to dwell on this too much, obviously, but one more question in that vein. Did it shape anything with the pilot coming the weeks in advance? I mean, because I remember, was there talk about delaying it at any point, or would
no? There was no talk.
Always...
There's no talk about that. Was there, El?
No, there wasn't. And the pilot had been shot 6 months before.
Right.
It was locked and everything. So no, there wasn't. The only show where they, I think, changed stuff, and it obviously was a different show and more current, was 24. You know, they had like a plane explosion in the pilot or something, and they didn't anyway. But no,
but
for
like
us,
Al said, I mean, for us, it was just literally the perception of the show completely changed in the press overnight. It was like, oh, why do we need this show? And suddenly it's like, oh, this is a celebration of America, and he's the ultimate, you know, illegal immigrant, and this is amazing. And it's sort of like a patriotic, you know, comfort food that people, and it's true, you know. And then what was interesting over the next 10 years of the show is, and we had a lot of military soldiers, Marines writing to us from Afghanistan and from Iraq, and they used to watch the show on the bases, and it was a big deal for them in terms of seeing that, one, that American hero, and two, the depiction of America in that way, and family, and what the values that the Kents had. And that really was, you know, they sent us really like deeply moving letters and photographs of them all watching it, you know, these huge tents and things. So that was really, it really made an impact for them, I think, in a really positive way. And the show, you know, really found its time. It was perfectly timed, you know, even though tragedy was there, but I think it really gave comfort and support to the, you know, men and women who were fighting out there and doing their work. And it was something they could escape to.
That's something I feel you guys, in that sense, contributed to a long tradition of, you know, Superman being overseas with the troops. You know, going back to the very earliest days of you know, back in World War II, it was comic books that were kind of keeping a lot of the troops in good spirits as much as possible. So in a big way, you guys contributed to that sort of ongoing tradition.
Yeah, and it's absolutely right. That is something that is so profound about Superman. And again, it was just odd timing that it occurred during the run of Smallville that we were, you know.
Yeah. I remember one funny story was this one platoon sent us and said, "We really love your show, but we got to admit we're watching it illegally." we had the network send them a bunch of actually at the time, this is before the DVDs. We said, can we just send them VHSs that we send them that they can watch?
That's awesome.
That's great.
So given obviously the news of the last few weeks, I'm sure that all has kind of circulated back in your minds too. Just coming up on so many anniversaries.
I know.
With the show, which is just incredible to think about. I mean, I remember, you know, I don't remember what I was doing on September 10th, 2001. Obviously, I remember everything about September 11th, but I remember everything about October 16th, 2001. I can remember sitting down that night and watching the pilot when it aired on the WB, and just how huge that was for me, you know, coming off of years after, like you said, Lois and Clark, and what obviously an impact this show has made. And when you think about that legacy, when you think about 20 years out and how there's still conventions and, you know, all these kind of things that the cast still do, what does that do for you? What do you think and see all this that still exists because of something you started? Because I honestly feel that Arrow, you know, all these other shows that came later on the CW, I mean, nothing like that would have happened without Smallville, without you two, honestly.
Right. No, I mean, it's nice, you know, again, it's one of the, I mean, you look at where just television is now with streaming and everything, and to have a show that was still sort of in the monoculture, even though it was on the WB, and to have it make an impact and kind of lay the groundwork for all the, you know, all the superhero shows that followed. But that the show itself, because of streaming, still has this audience. And, you know, exactly, Michael and Tom and Glover and Erica, you know, they're at these conventions and we see it, and they still have packed halls, which is crazy. You know, the show's 20 years old, you know, and it has fans of, you know, many generations. You know, it's, you know, my daughter, who's now in college, who was 1.5 when 9/11 happened.
Yeah.
she has, friends who watch Smallville. So it's just, which is, it's fascinating. It really
But I still,
is.
I mean, to your point, I still think it is, it is the granddaddy of all those shows on the CW. And they're all their own thing. And Belanti's done an amazing job building that universe. And, we were trying and was stymied in our attempts to do the same thing. We had incredible opposition from the feature division of Warner Brothers. We tried to do Wonder Woman, we tried to do Aquaman, we tried to do Teen Titans, and we tried to do Robin. Every turn we were blocked, and it was a deeply frustrating experience. And then when we finally got Aquaman up, it was like literally the WB was canceled and was taken over by the UPN, and the person in charge had literally every intent to destroy Smallville from her initial conversation with us. It was literally like sabotage. And so we were fighting for our survival. And the great thing about the show is that the fans kept watching, and they couldn't kill it, even though they tried to year in, year out. We kept surviving. And that's the legacy of Superman, but also the legacy of the cast and the show itself. So I think, it's great to see that it has expanded, but it's obviously a little frustrating for us that we had tried and was sort of thwarted in our own way to expand from the show.
Did that become a running joke between you two of just throwing things at the wall, and then DC or WB Feature just being like, no, never mind?
Yeah, I mean, completely. I mean, then the weirdest thing was when there was this Superman script that was floating around. They wanted to make it and in the script, it's like Krypton didn't explode. So, the pivotal moment of genesis of the Superman story didn't happen in this script. And so they were like, oh, you can't do anything on Krypton now. It's like, you can't see his parents. You can't do any of that. It's like, well, we did it. He lands in a spaceship. So he came from somewhere. The whole Krypton, the kryptonite is from somewhere, the planet blowing up. So it was just like bizarre. And then finally the script died. So they go, oh, you can do what you want now. But, and then we had to go, when the Bryan Singer movie happened, we had to go fly down to Australia to explain what we're going to do. And he was, very accommodating, but it was still like we always at the mercy of whatever the feature division wanted to do, even though we're a huge hit now in our own right. It was really strange situation to be in and to navigate the sort of the politics of the studio at that point.
I guess just from watching, and obviously watching Superman Returns, if you had to pick a theatrical film to kind of be the sister to Smallville airing at the same time, at least, you were going in season 5. The Fortress of Solitude was introduced. Obviously, they used that. There were a lot of the themes from the Donner films that you guys implemented, that they implemented. I mean, a lot different than would have been if a Zack Snyder film had been running in theaters while Smallville was still in the air.
Right. Yeah. No, it was. Look, we came out at a fortunate time because, as I remind people, there was no Marvel Cinematic Universe at that point. The only Marvel film that had been released was the first X-Men movie. So.
Well, yeah, and the irony was that Al and I were working on Spider-Man 2, and Kevin Feige was literally kind of not the assistant, but he was definitely the junior guy with Avi Arad over at Marvel at that point, and so to see his incredible rise and stewardship of that is just amazing.
Yeah, and he always said, I remember, was because at that time they had the different franchises at different studios, and he was always very frustrated and said they should all be together. They should all be one, and he's done it, which is amazing.
Did it, pulled it off.
If you speak it into existence long enough, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
And you were talking about your daughter, Al. My daughter is 10 now, and we're watching together for the first time. She's very much into it. She said, "Can I come up with a list of questions?" I said, "Absolutely not." I said, "I've been waiting."
That's one of the great things about the show, though. It was very much a daddy and daughter show, because dads love to show and explain the mythology of Superman to their daughters. So it was really, we got a lot of that in terms of dad's been really grateful to us that they had this experience, this shared viewership with their daughters and their kids. So it's a really a great legacy, and something that we obviously as fathers of daughters are very proud of.
She was born just a few weeks before the finale aired, the series finale aired. So it's been fun watching that with her and just kind of get her reaction to it. She wanted me to, I told her I'd allow her one question. She wanted me to ask if there was anything cut from the pilot that you guys just absolutely hated that you didn't get to put in. I know obviously there's some extended versions of it out there, but she wanted to know if anything didn't make it to pilot that you wrote on the page that just absolutely fell in love with. It was your baby and lost.
Not really. I mean, there was a couple scenes like in the football scene, Clark has a daydream where he plays football and then Pete interrupts him out of it. And then the scene with Jonathan and Clark where he's telling Lex to give his truck back, that scene's a little bit longer as well. Yeah. But that was kind of I think
we had one more scene with the Creek kid, I think. Maybe.
Oh, you're right. Yeah. That's it. Good.
But yeah, it was a pretty complete pilot. I mean, we're pretty excited. It was a very difficult pilot, but it was David Nutter did a great job, and it was the first we'd done, I think, 2 pilots before that, and then neither of which we were happy with. And this one we really were like focused on getting what our intention was as showrunners and creators onto the screen. And I think that was the first time we really felt it had happened in a way that we were excited about and thought, yeah, this represents the script that we wrote, and the intention of the show was accurate.
With the you guys were obviously been told through, now it becomes legend after 20 years to hear you talk about it, but Lois Lane originally to talk about wanting to do that pilot, a young Lois Lane and her friend CK and all that. How far did you guys get on that? I mean, was that just a treatment? Was that a script, or was there talks being done before Roth and everybody were like, let's go Superman?
No, we really didn't. I mean, Lois was somebody, she came in season 4, right. And that took a year and a half of negotiation as well. So,
and also we had promised them like we'd only put her in like 5 episodes, wasn't it, Al?
Yeah, we did 5, and then Peter's like, just keep putting her in the show. So he was like, put her in 12. I think she started out in 3 and then ended up in 12, and then they were finally like, okay, you can have her. But that was that took a long time as well. Like none of it was ever easy.
Right, but pre-Smallville, when you guys were talking about that version instead of doing Smallville, when you guys were talking about doing the young Lois Lane script, and then also is there Bruce Wayne?
That was
knocked around as well.
Yeah, there was a young Bruce Wayne script that was written not by us, that was written sort of on spec, I think, and then that was never going to happen at that point. And then we had this deal at Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
Yes, Al, that's right. You could go.
No, we had to do, and we had gone in just looking for something and thought, oh, maybe a way into Superman is to do like a young Lois Lane show.
Right.
And then it was like, oh, we actually can they got the rights to Superman. But, and that's really, kind of how it started. And at that point, nobody, Superman was like, here, have them, do with them what you want. I mean, the good news is, all the things we did with, Smallville and the Kryptonite and Lex, living there and introducing Lionel Luthor and stuff. Today there would be like a phalanx of people to try to get through any of that. So, but at that point, Jeanette Kahn, was amazing.
Yeah, it was totally like we could do it. It really, obviously had to be within the integrity and the tone of Superman mythology, but we really had free reign to do what we wanted, which was incredibly liberating. And then, I guess I don't know how many years later we went back with Teen Titans. They wanted us to do Teen Titans, Peter did, and then we went and pitched it, and they were like, "Oh no, you can't do any of this stuff. You can't do any. You have to be completely like, it was like the Holy Bible. You have to do exactly what it says in this comic book." And it's like, okay, well, it's. I think people want an expansion of what they see, a new version. So it was really interesting in terms of the evolution, and that was partly because superhero movies and became much more prominent in the pop culture, and the canon became canon. So we were sort of, I would say, pre-canon.
Versus 2021, when you have 14 different iterations of Batman or somebody on the air, when you have to fight for so many things. Was there one? Obviously, I know you mentioned Wonder Woman, and illusions were made over the years, and Brian Q. Miller obviously got to implement some things in the season 11 storyline that, like Batman and things that obviously weren't able to do on screen previous to that. But was there ever a character that you were just like, that would have been perfect? We would have absolutely had it if we had been allowed to use them.
Well, I think it's definitely. I mean, Diana Prince was one, and obviously, young Bruce Wayne would have been cool as well. And then they did a version of that with Gotham. So, but at that point, but also we were in the midst of at that point, it was the midst of the Nolan movie. So then we knew that was really not going to happen.
Sure.
So, yeah, and now, of course, it seems like you can have a Flash TV show and a Flash movie and a Flash, animated show, and it's fine. It's just how it's evolved. I think
Sure.
I think the problem with all of these superhero shows at the moment is it's hard to distinguish one from the other. You know what I mean? There's so many now. It's like, how do you actually make an impact? Yeah. So that's the challenge. I mean, the nice thing for us was it was all virgin territory. Nobody had really done it, so it was great.
And it seems like you guys were able to, setting up your version of the Justice League, like you were able to play in that sandbox a little bit with the Flash, with Green Arrow, with a lot of those characters. Were there any characters, sort of the flip side, like were there any characters that you're like, I can't believe they're letting us do this?
No, I mean, that was fun. We did that in season 6, and but again, even that was kind of a weird negotiation. It's just, I mean, the one that we got, and then we just had the right guy. Justin Hartley had been in our Aquaman pilot, and when that didn't go, we're like, well, he's got to be in Smallville because that guy's a TV star. And then bringing in Oliver Queen, was great, and I think actually helped give the show kind of a boost. As you get into those later seasons, you really need to figure out how to sort of inject fresh blood into the show. And again, we were not somebody who went to the DC toy box. We didn't go there until season 4 with Lois, really, and then we tried to incremental. By now, as in today's landscape, all those characters will be introduced in episode 3. So it's just like whoa, everybody's in the show and everybody's in a costume. Got it.
Yeah.
So
if the pilot were today, you'd hear Jor-El probably at the end of the pilot versus.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
2 years
No,
later.
I know. It's just, I mean, it's fascinating. Just the, kind of the slow burn of it. Which was which I don't know.
Well,
if people...
some of it was a little too slow. I mean, obviously we got in trouble
probably.
with the Clark-Lana relationship, which it's glacial. It was back trying to get to season 5. That was always the goal in network television. You got to get to season 5. You're going to be slow, there was a sort of Peter Roth mantra, like, "Oh, guys, you're going too fast. You got to like save stuff." It's like, well, Anyway, I mean, it worked, but it was still like, I know there was a lot of backlash against that relationship or about that. This is the sort of slow, but it's just that's part of the fun of it, of course.
I think that I always. It was never anything that I ever felt was grueling. I'll say that in front of both of you. I never felt that way. That seemed like a very logical high school relationship of two people that go back and forth until, one of them meets the love of their life and that they've been with since 1938. And that kind of erases everything else for you. Kind of talking about that, when 5 being the goal, when you transition, you come out of the end of the season 4 finale, you come out of commencement, that bonus episode, extra footage and everything, going into a huge season 5. The marketing was all like everything you've waited to see will happen, and all the trailers and posters and everything said like that. And the Fortress, I mean, you that's one of the biggest stepping stones. I mean, the 5's just a pivotal shift in the series.
Well, it's
obviously.
What happened was, I remember we did an Entertainment Weekly, one of those things like season, what's coming or the season, recap. And then they put on the thing like shows on the bubble. And it was like, we were not on the bubble. We were never near a bubble. And then when season 5 came around, they were going to move the show again, and they're moving us to Thursday nights, which was kind of a buzzsaw of television shows. And, we were against like Alias and the OC and a bunch of things. And we thought, oh God, okay, well, in our heads, we're like, this is probably going to be our last season. And so we're just going to all the things we've been holding, let's finally do. And obviously he was out of high school, and there were a lot of other things that we could open up. And I think because we had the freedom to just say, screw it, and let's just play the cards and, play it as it lays, it actually revitalized the show. And then the show was #1 in its time period, and obviously went on for 5 more seasons. So it was, and they moved us to Thursday. We were just telling this story the other day, because at the time, Thursday night is when all, the movie studios would put all their trailers, which was premium money for a network. So they wanted the big shows to draw those eyeballs. So it was a complete sort of marketing scheduling strategy that actually I think gave the show that kind of second wind that managed to, have it run 5 more years.
Which is funny, because actually Frank, am I wrong? Didn't the Superman Returns trailer premiere during?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, that's right.
Think about.
Yeah, and he was very, he was actually supportive of the show and stuff. So it was a good, it was a nice thing to do. And then I think later on, Chris Nolan as well did that, I think, or something like that with Dark Knight or something. I think it was interesting.
Yeah, we did. We introduced one of the Dark Knight. No, you know what it was? It was actually Batman Begins. We did.
Oh, was it? Yeah.
Oh,
that was the commencement. That was why
that was the
season 4 finale was.
Yeah.
Exciting.
That's
There
right.
you go.
Yeah, because we extended that episode so that they could put in like a sneak preview of Dark Knight, like they did like a sneak preview. So
Right.
Yes.
Was when you got to the end of season 5 and you had Lex becoming Zod, or inhabited by Zod, and Brainiac, and all these things that literally you were throwing everything in the kitchen sink. Let's do it. Let's go for it. If this were the end, did there become a point of like, are we coming back? Are we gonna be able to fulfill all these promises? Because I know obviously at some point at the beginning of season 6 is when UPN, when mergers started talking, and CW was on the horizon for the end of season, or the start of season 6.
It was the start of season 6. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, our philosophy was always, because you write a show, you start in June, and you sort of finish writing the show in February, and the show shoots until March and then airs in May. And so we sort of write ourselves in the corner, and the network or studio would ask us all the time, like, well, how do you get out of it? We're like, I don't know, we'll solve it in June. You know what I mean? The thing is let's just make
I'm going on vacation. We will.
Yeah, exactly.
Renew us and find out.
It's called.
Exactly. We're like, guys, we've literally figured it out for the last 5 years. I'm sure we'll be fine.
We'll be fine.
We'll be fine.
And that, and we also, the sort of ace up our sleeve for 6 was introducing Oliver Queen too. So we knew like once that pilot wasn't going, we had Justin. So we kind of moved him into position pretty quickly. So,
but again, like it's still a fight for our lives, which I think is a good place to be, because it makes you nimble, and you have to make sure that the episodes are good, because you've got someone at the head of the network who is not interested in your show surviving. So you have that element as well.
It keeps you on your toes. It keeps that hunger going. Yeah.
Yeah.
And obviously,
exactly.
You two were both very invested in Mercy Reef, the Aquaman pilot, that not coming to fruition. Was that just another nail in the wall because of the merger, or because of the CW,
that was totally a victim merger. It was sort of, it's always one of those things, like it not getting picked up really had very little to do with the show and everything to do with the politics of CBS and Warner Brothers at the time. That was all, and that's a show we know would have run 5 seasons at least. What I mean?
Again, it's not a perfect pilot. If you look at the pilot, it's one of those things. It's unfinished. We'd have gone back and reshot stuff and maybe done some recasting, maybe. But there's definitely, like, if you can't see the show in that, and as Al said, Justin Hartley has proven to be a huge TV star, and that's something you can't, that is a rare commodity. So the fact that they squandered that opportunity and the chance to build that franchise on that network was criminal. So it was really unfortunate timing.
It was unfortunate timing, and then obviously they were all becoming, it was becoming like the Gossip Girl network. And then when Mark Pedowitz came in, frankly, to his I give him all the credit because he was like, oh, we should, because I remember they had Vampire Diaries. They're like, you know what, these genre shows are working, and then he just doubled down on all the genre stuff, and he kind of turned it around for them, because they really had lost a lot of their market share. So, but yeah, some of those things, again, it's out of your control. So
yeah, doesn't make it any easier.
No.
Sure,
but
no.
Yeah.
I know how much both of you loved that, or I've heard you talk obviously about how much that pilot, that show was going to mean to you. So it's always sad to me not seeing it move forward. But obviously we get Justin on season 6 moving forward. So best of both worlds.
I kind of wonder, speaking of Justin, like, did he sort of slot in, or did Oliver sort of slot in where like a young Bruce Wayne might have slotted in, sort of carrying the same mantle on the series that Bruce might have?
You know what? Honestly, yes. Because what's interesting about, if you look at obviously the Oliver Queen story and the Bruce Wayne story, they're incredibly similar, and they kind of are the same. They're usually rich guys who don't really have a superpower, but have a sort of a vigilante bent. So I think he definitely did that, and it was, as the show was expanding and, we were no longer in high school and we were sort of, more Metropolis, it was somebody who could actually, expand Clark's worldview of what a hero is, because Superman's one side and Oliver Queen kind of represented the other. So, but yeah, absolutely. Guess what? If we could have had Bruce Wayne, he would have been Bruce Wayne. So
yeah, no question.
Yeah.
In addition to who you wish you would have been able to use from the DC toy box, but you guys got to use a ton of legacy casting from the Superman universe. I mean, obviously Christopher Reeve being in season 2, coming in with Rosetta, Margot Kidder, just a ton of different people that have left their own footprint in the legend, and so what was that like, bringing those people into the fold? Obviously Chris being top tier with that.
It was great, and it's something we always wanted to do, is to sort of pay homage to those other versions of Superman. And obviously the Donner movie had been a big influence on us in the show, just especially in that Smallville section, just the tone of that. So we went after Chris pretty we went after him sort of at the end of season 1, just to see, and his kids had watched the show, so he'd seen it, and he was, impressed with kind of the tone of it, and was always surprised how we could do the visual effects, knowing how long it took him to do it in 1978. And we, and he was great. We were able to get him. We went to New York. So it was, it was literally, I think it was Greg Beeman and Tom, and I went as well. And we went and we shot in the Third Watch, which is a Warner show. John Wells sort of gave us a place where we could shoot. And Chris came, and we had a couple scenes to do, and we sort of staged it very simply, because they're like, he's here, but he's only can do it for a few hours and stuff like that. And Chris saw the blocking. He goes, well, that seems a little boring. And we're like, well, yeah, but we want to give it. He goes, I'll stay as long as you want. Like, I'm fine. And then we did it, and he literally stayed all day and was fantastic. And then we shot a PSA for his foundation, which was, one of the, which we were happy to do. But he was fantastic. And then he came back in season 3 as well. Mm-hmm. So, and I remember we wanted him to come in season 4, and I'd had a call with him, and he was like, I can't do it. I'm not really doing that well. Yeah. Like he kind of knew, and that's when we got Margot Kidder.
Right.
So
his death, obviously impacting the show, impacting the fans. That I remember that day very well too. But were there elements you were hoping to weave him into? Obviously, coming into season 4 with Clark and the Kal-El storyline, were there things that didn't get to pan out, even with bringing Margot in, that you were hoping to make happen?
Yeah, I think because he could always be what we were hoping, and he was doing it. Obviously, starting with Rosetta, is he was kind of the link between Clark and Krypton. You know what I mean? In a way, and that's really what we were hoping to do. And he was, and again, like when we called him, he was always game to do it. And then I said, when in season 4, he just said, I'm not doing well. Yeah. So, I mean, he was also an incredibly pragmatic guy. So he kind of knew what his, so that was the, but it was, I mean, the fact that we got him in the show and, we were able to use the Superman music from the movie because, the Salkinds, always fans of unions, did it in London, which meant it was actually affordable for us to get the music. So, which was just a nice benefit for that. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that music comes on, it really is, it's haunting. And so I always get so emotional hearing that theme. It's just so impactful. And so it's great to have it in that show.
Yeah.
What about Terence? I've heard interviews. I've seen you guys talk about Chris and Margot before, but bringing Terence in as Jor-El, what were those early conversations like when you were discussing who was going to be one of the biggest steps into the Superman mythos you guys had made at that point with season 2?
Well, we wanted the idea that Jor-El may have been a more malevolent force than a force for good, like he was in the movie. And so the idea of getting Terence Stamp, who obviously played Zod, and I think he was living, maybe still does. He was living in Australia, and we had reached out to him, and again, his kids knew about the show.
That's
and
great.
He did it because my kids say the show is really popular, and it's just voice work. So it was
so easy for him to do.
It was so easy. He was that was an easier get just because he could go into a studio in Sydney and just do it. So. But we definitely, again, wanted that baggage of the guy who played Zod. Now he's the voice of Jor-El. What does that mean? What were his real intentions for Clark? So,
in talking about days I remember the pilot. I remember the day that Craig Byrne sent me the infamous "We're leaving" letter, the goodbye letter from you both, and how that affected you guys, how that affected the series. When did those conversations start? When you guys looked at each other and said, it's time for us to move on to other things, to do something else, as season 6, the writer's strike coming season 7 and all that happening at this NCW, all that kind of is a perfect storm of things.
Yeah, and there was part of it was the right. We'd come out of the writer's strike, and that, which always kind of makes you reassess things, and then there were going to be budget constraints in season 8, that become inevitable with the show that's on as long as it is. And, we had been talking about it since, initially we're going to leave after season 5. So it's just, but we didn't. But then we kind of told all the stories we wanted to tell. And it felt like if we weren't going to end it in season 8, because at that point, Tom wasn't sure, we were like, well, if it's just going to keep going on, and that's fine and that's great, but we don't want to do that. So that's when we said, and the only way, look, we didn't watch any episodes after season 7, right. So because that's it was a clean break. They all.
I still actually have had no idea how it ended. So it's one of those weird things. People ask me, and people talk about some cast members. I have no idea who they are.
Huh.
So it's like
Clark and Lana ended up getting together. Wild.
Yeah, weirdest thing.
Who knew? Who knew?
But it's so I think for us it felt like the right time, and we were doing other things that and we knew that the show would be in good hands because we literally all the folks that ran it after us we trained, so we knew it was in good hands. The cast was great, and
also we have zero regrets. I mean, it was like we had a great run. We loved it. We were completely invested 100%, and it was time for us to do other stuff, and we've been very happy with what we've done since, and it's been an incredible ride. And was obviously, but the Smallville legacy is still, a point of greatest pride for us, and is still we're known for that, creating that show, and it's still what a thing to be known for, and it's incredible.
Yeah.
Frank, what am I forgetting before we need to say goodbye to him?
Was Lana's baby always going to be fake? I kid, but really, was Lana's baby? Was that a pivot, or was that always the plan?
I think it was always fake. So
Always
it's
fake.
baby. Yeah.
Fake baby.
Yeah.
All right.
Big baby.
Fake baby. There you go.